The good news is we're all in this together. And when we see we're together, we can work things out. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 282nd edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the famous Tom Fennell.
Number 300 is coming up.
Number 300 is coming up.
Going to have a big party.
We have to figure out what we're going to do about the party. I don't know where we're going to do that or what we're going to have. I think we're going to have it in a closet at BCTV and offer iced tea to people or something. I don't know. Anyway, every day I get up. Today I overslept. I got up at about 4:45. But I get up and I go to, the first thing I do after making a pot of coffee is go to work finding news on energy and climate change. And I gather the pieces I can, put together a 50-word synopsis of each with a link to the original, assemble about 10 or 15 of these, and put them up on my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. You can go there and see the articles that we're going to be talking about. The first articles that we have will be from the 13th of September. Today is the 20th, and we do the previous week. So should we just get going? You have something to say.
Well, you always say this about that about now, but some of these things are very detailed and very interesting.
Yep.
My goodness, we could spend the whole show on one of these issues, some of them. Anyhow.
Actually, we could probably spend a couple of shows just on the first one.
So if I will try to remind you of one of them that's of any of them that are particularly compelling, and look them up, and there's no law against you looking at them yourself.
Yep, and you know, I should, since you're talking about people looking it up, I should remind people that geoharvey.com has a calendar. You can click on a date to see what the news is for that date, and you can, we will keep you apprised, as well as we remember to do, of what date these articles come from, so you can go to that date and read the article. And as I said, the first one is from the 13th of September, and the article is from The Guardian.
And it starts off with a picture.
It sure does.
There it is. Put that one right up.
Let's put the picture up.
Bingo.
There you go.
That is North Carolina. Although it's an old picture, that's not from the recent hurricane.
No, it's not.
It's from the one that hit before.
Yeah, that's 2011. That's from Irene. So what do you got for a title?
North Carolina didn't like science on sea levels, so it passed a law against it.
Well, this will tell you what happens.
It sounds like King Canute.
Sure does.
He's the guy that told that the tide couldn't advance.
Commanded the tide not to advance.
Yeah, and he got wet feet.
He got wet feet. The thing about King Canute, though, is he did that because he was trying to teach his courtiers a lesson.
Oh, yeah?
That's what I've read.
Mm-hmm.
And what he, you know, they thought that he had some kind of supernatural power, and he said, "I want you to take my throne down to the seashore."
So he knew it wasn't going to work.
He knew it wasn't going to work. But these people thought it was going to work. And the article is from The Guardian. It says in 2012, North Carolina, this is 2012, and it's after Hurricane Irene, which is where that
picture
came from. North Carolina reacted to a prediction by its Coastal Resources Commission that sea levels would rise 39 inches over the next century by passing a law banning policies based on such forecasts. So there it is. Now the thing is in the path, or at the time this was published, it was in the path of Hurricane Florence, and people were starting to say, wait a minute, that wasn't a good idea.
Well, Stephen Colbert, the comedian.
Yeah.
This is a quote. "If your science gives you a result you don't like, you pass a law saying the result is illegal. Yes. Problem solved."
Well, and we've been seeing an awful lot of this, you know, and the people who are doing it, if you say climate change, they say, the Democrats have made the whole issue into a political issue. Wow.
Well, it's interesting about North Carolina because it's got the article said it's got a long, low-lying coastline. Actually, it has two.
Yes.
It's got the islands out there,
yes,
which are very precarious. I mean, they may not be there much longer.
Yes.
I've been out there. They're beautiful.
Yes.
And this is Kitty Hawk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That is that an area where they speak Gullah?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
But Gullah was the dialect of English that was developed by basically the freed black slaves after the Civil War.
Actually, before that, Tom, I've got a story about
Probably.
it.
But they lived on these islands that had no access to the mainland. Virtually, they were too far out for rowboat.
There is a tribe in Africa called the Gullah.
Uh-huh.
And the Gullah and the Gullah both speak almost identical dialects of the English language.
That's interesting.
Now, of course, slaves from America were sent back to Liberia during the 1820s.
Liberia, definitely, yes. Yeah.
And my brother lived among them.
Oh, yeah?
And he learned to speak English in that dialect. And I had another brother who went to Juilliard and studied drama. And he learned how to memorize things he couldn't understand.
Is that so? Yeah.
And he was walking along the coast, I think it was South Carolina, not North Carolina, but he came across one of these old black guys who was sitting there, fishing. And came across, said to him, I guess the fish must be biting on a misty day like this. And the guy looked up at him and he told him, on the day to day, da da, the day to day, ain't da, on the day to day, ain't da, da, the day to day, da. So Nate memorized that, which is where this all came from. And Nate told that to a group of people at a party in New York, where my brother Reed from Africa happened to be in attendance. And Reed just started to laugh because he understood exactly what the man had said. He had said, on the day that they're there, that's the day that they ain't there. But on the day that they ain't there, that's the day that they're there. Now talk about probably the greatest philosopher of the 20th century was an old fisherman.
By the way, for those that are watching, if you want something close to Gullah, think of Uncle Remus.
Ah.
You know, the Uncle Remus tales?
Yeah, absolutely.
And think of the way they spoke it. That's pretty much what the Gullah sounded like.
Yep. Okay, we are off on a tangent that we shouldn't be off on. We should probably get to our next thing. That thing in North Carolina about banning, it's like, it makes me think of somebody who's driving down a road and the person next to him says, wait a minute, there's a barrier up there. And the person says, I don't see it. And somebody else reaches across the dashboard and paints black paint all over the screen so the driver can't see where he's going. It's just like, what kind of mind is going to do this to people, to themselves, to their children? But I want people to remember, 39 inches by the end of this century. 39 inches in
that's more than a yard.
A little over 80 years. That's almost half an inch a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now,
it's about a meter, isn't it?
Yeah, very close to a full meter. Okay, we should get going.
I think we should.
Next item is from the Weather Network.
This one's interesting. The nuclear plants in Florence's path prepare to weather the storm. Now, there's a map about where they're located. Yep. And I guess you're going to bring us up to date on what did happen.
Yep. As Hurricane Florence churned its way toward the Carolinas, at least 8 nuclear power plants stand in its way. North Carolina's Brunswick nuclear plant and South Carolina's Robinson and Vogtle nuclear stations are in areas that will be likely to see the worst impacts. Now, it happens that all of those nuclear plants except Brunswick just kept right on going. But Brunswick, the winds got to the point where they had to shut the plant down. Subsequently, the plant was cut off on roads. You could not get in and out or by flooding. And the report that came out today from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission said that one of the 2 reactors was back up to 15% power, which means that they're putting the reactors back online. In order to do that, they've obviously got to be able to get people in and out.
Yeah.
So the situation is at least marginally better on the roads.
Now, one thing they mentioned this before the storm actually hit. They didn't even talk about the toxic waste from the industrial plants, and particularly from the pig farms.
Pig farms, coal-burning power plants.
It's coming out now that's considerable.
It is a big problem. Coal ash in the water, pig manure in the water. It's a big problem. And of course, I want to point out it would be a whole lot better if that pig manure, instead of going into what they call lagoons or ponds, if that went into biodigesters, there would be very little of it there to get into the water.
That makes too much sense.
Yeah, too much sense. I like your way of thinking. Should we move on?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay, we've got an item here from Echo Business.
Clean energy can provide 100% of electricity.
Who'd have thought?
Well, if you're watching our show here, you're saying, duh.
A report by the Center for Alternative Technology says clean energy could meet all our electric needs using only existing technology at all times of day, all year round. It draws on scenarios designed to meet targets of the Paris Agreement developed at various scales. And this, by the way, is all over the world.
Yes. It is.
So,
comes from the article here. Imagine a world with so much renewable clean energy that it could provide all the electricity society needed reliably and without any interruption around the clock.
Yep. And
it could soon be a reality.
Yeah.
And it will.
That's not just plug-in electric for our current appliances. That is
everything.
Heating, transportation, the whole bailiwick. We are up to Friday, September 14th, and we have a picture here of a house.
We got a house on fire.
An article from the BBC. This is about something that practically every news organization in New England had something about this, but certainly the BBC was the first place I found this.
Well, this is an interesting article. There's a video. There's videos on it. There's lots of pictures on it, and it says, gas-related explosions set fire to homes near Boston.
At least one person was killed. By the way, the number has not gone up since this article appeared. And others were injured, about 20 of them. In 60 to 80 separate incidents thought to be gas explosions and fires in towns north of Boston. A fire chief said investigators suspect the fires were caused by, quote, overpressurization of a gas main, end quote, belonging to Columbia Gas Lines. Now, Columbia Gas Lines has been sued in the meantime.
They're not wasting any time, are they?
No, for at least $50 million. You did put that picture up?
Yeah, I'll put it up again.
Okay. I mean, there were 50 or 60 houses where this kind of thing happened. One of them, a chimney collapsed, and that's why
somebody killed
teenage boy sitting in a car was killed. But the thing is, the pressure in the gas lines doesn't sound like much when you just hear the figure. It was 6 pounds per square inch, but it was supposed to be half a pound per square inch. All right, now that's half a pound over and above the regular atmospheric pressure, but it was 6 pounds. And so it was at 12 times the pressure.
So it was leaking all over the place.
Yeah, we've talked about the numbers of gas leaks there are. The people who went through Boston and found about 3,000 of them just driving down the roads in cars with equipment that was there to detect them. Anyway, this will show you an interesting side, a kind of scary side of having gas lines.
You don't think about it.
You don't think about it, no. It happens. Nancy Ray Mallory, who's the editor of Green Energy Times, which I write for, said that when she was living in New York State, just a few miles down the road in Pennsylvania, propane leaked. And propane, unlike methane, which is natural gas, is considerably heavier than air. So it pooled and ran down a roadside and then exploded after pooling down at the bottom and just blew up half a dozen houses, killed a bunch of people. It can happen.
You don't think about this stuff much.
No.
Take it for granted.
No, but I'll tell you, it's
Turn
a
the
whole
stove,
lot
it goes
better.
on.
Whole lot better than city gas, which they had in the 19th century, which was essentially natural gas that they used for lighting and everything. So it was all through the house. And one of the big constituents of that was carbon monoxide.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So our next item is from Energy Matters.
Yeah, we got a picture here too.
Nope, not yet.
We don't, the picture doesn't go with this one.
Nope, it
goes with the next one.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it could go with this one too, but we'll wait.
I can put it up if you want. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
This is for the next one, but it'll work for this too.
It works for this one. Wind and solar power are unstoppable, even without government support.
Australian wind and solar power are booming despite the Australian government's retreat on carbon emissions and energy policy, a Deloitte report claims. The report also says Australia enjoys the lowest global cost for solar panels.
That's interesting.
I think it is. But the United States is not very far behind, and the same thing is true in the United States. Wind and solar power are moving forward, and if we eliminated all supports for them, they would still move forward.
They've reached that point, I believe.
The problem I see with this is what they're replacing is carbon-based fuels. And the carbon-based fuels are arguably killing, well, I've seen various figures, but upwards of 200,000 Americans a year are dying. And I will say, because this could happen, they are dying needlessly.
We've talked about that.
Now, the U.S., I forget which one of the departments it is, the last figure I saw, I forget whether it was $6 million or $8 million per person is the cost of life. So 200,000 times 8 million, you're talking about economic losses of $1.6 trillion a year. And we should be not moving to support the replacement for that?
Well, it's not going to be very many years before they look back and say, imagine back in those days they actually paid for fuel.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be too many years before people look back and they say some very nasty things about people who are preventing us from moving forward as quickly as we can.
It's called stranded assets, and they're held by some very important people.
Yes.
They don't want to give it up.
Yes, that's right.
That's how Rockefeller made his money in the first place.
Right. Okay. Now we're back to the thing that wind farm, offshore wind farm, was
so
for.
You want me to pull it up again?
Yeah, if you'd like. That previous article was from Energy Matters. The next one is from Clean Technica.
By the way, if you watch this show, you really know what's going on in Australia, don't you?
Well, Australia is an interesting place, and the Australian Liberal Party government,
which is conservative,
is an interesting kind of. It's comparison to the American government. They're very, very similar. The Australian prime ministers are kind of similar to Donald Trump, and in varying degrees. The people who are running Australia, the energy
on the federal level.
On the federal level. On the state level, it's an entirely different thing.
The opposite.
It's the opposite. Anyway, this is an article from Clean Technica. You have a title?
Well, I certainly do. Global energy demand to peak in 2035. Now, that's an interesting concept.
Yes, global energy demand to peak. The world's energy demand is expected to decline from 2035 onwards, according to a global risk management and quality assurance company, DNVGL. It published a report predicting that the demand decline will result in a reshaping of energy investment trends. So that set of stranded assets you were talking about is going to be really stranded.
Some win, some lose.
Some win, some lose. And you can see this kind of thing if you look at, for example, computers.
Absolutely, a perfect example.
Perfect example. I have a little computer, draws 1/2 watt.
Yeah.
And I plug into that thing a little monitor, it's about this big, that draws 2.5 watts. And I can do anything
so
you
got
want.
3 watts going.
I got 3 watts
you
going, as opposed
power
to
that with a flashlight battery.
Yes, and that is as opposed to a computer that I had about 10 years ago that drew 200 watts.
Mm-hmm.
So the decline is a decline to about 1.5% of what it was, and this level of decline you can't expect in refrigerators and cars and things like that. But nevertheless, you can expect things to decline, and you can expect efficiencies to grow. So even with a growing population, the energy demand will go down after 2035, they're saying.
A lot of this is going to happen due to eventual electrification.
Yes.
You know, and the electrification is going to come from sources that don't require
fuel. Yeah, absolutely.
And we've seen just during the time we've been doing this show what has happened to solar panels.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And now you can print them.
You can. The only thing is, if I were buying solar panels today, I'd buy the crystalline solar panels in glass, because those printed solar panels,
they're not going to last 50 years.
No, they're not going to last as long. And as a matter of fact, they're really not even available on the market yet. But the crystalline solar panel price is going down.
Way down.
Very, very fast.
Despite the tariffs.
We are up to Saturday, September 15th. And
already?
We have an article from Clean Technica here.
Okay, we got, this is a good article. There's a lot of pictures in it.
Yes.
References.
Yes.
Predictions. And I guess the picture we've already seen, but I'm going to bring it up again. Hurricane Florence is part of what Al Gore got right in An Inconvenient Truth.
Now that picture, by the way, was for the previous article, and we used it for the article before that. So we're getting a lot of mileage out of this picture.
Well, we got a picture coming up for this one.
No, not yet.
That's for the next one, too?
That's for the next one. This is from Clean Technica. This was supposed to be a lighter than usual season in the El Nino cycle, but due to climate change, lighter does not mean what it used to. In the context of this, it's worth revisiting predictions made in Al Gore's film to assess their quality. And of course what happens is the article goes through an assessment of the quality of Al Gore's predictions.
Yeah, he was right on the money, wasn't he?
Basically, his predictions fall into two groups. The ones where he's clearly 100% right, and the ones where it's clear that he's at least 80% right, but the rest is maybe coming. So there you have it.
Well, a quick takeaway here. Hurricane Florence is just the most impactful hurricane so far of an unusual season. It's rare to have Atlantic and Pacific hurricanes churning simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yet that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
There are multiple tropical depressions being tracked. And this article was tracking Gore's predictions.
Well, we had, at one point during the week, when Hurricane Florence had not yet hit landfall, we had 4 named storms in the Atlantic Ocean, 2 of which were hurricanes and 2 of which were named storms that were not hurricanes.
Yeah.
This is really unusual.
That's exactly what they're just saying.
Really unusual. And that didn't even count one depression that was in the Caribbean. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, we got to move on, and we got a picture coming up this time.
I was in Massachusetts during Hurricane Bob, and I had a neighbor who had a boat that looked, maybe it was the same boat.
I hate to be faced with that dilemma.
In his backyard.
How do you get that boat out of there?
Well, yeah, how do you get it out?
And it looks like it's stuck in the ground with its...
well, the keel looks like it's stuck in the ground, and the boat, it's hard to see the tree on the other side of it, but I think it actually is wedged between 2 trees.
It kind of looks like it.
Yeah.
It really looks like it. Wow.
Okay.
That's what the sign says, a boat wedged between trees.
That's right. What is the title? I can get it if you, I've got it.
I've got it here. I just have to
scroll to it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Worsening storms are the price of greed.
The necessary and terrifyingly overdue efforts to combat climate change at the source of worsening storms are simply not being made in the United States. Instead, even small victories such as reducing pollution from coal and U.S. participation in the Paris Climate Accord are being walked back. Depressing thought.
It is that.
Yeah, and
well, a little takeaway from the article. And by the way, this is a very interesting article. If you like pictures, because there's 60 pictures in it.
Yeah, a lot of pictures.
And they're appropriate pictures.
Yeah.
Took me about 2.5 hours to go through the 60 pictures. Well, here's what it says. Companies that are the leading polluters have long benefited from American corporate welfare.
Yes.
Which is basically true. Those who hold political power need to heed the urgent message of Florence. Disaster prevention and not just relief needs to be a government obligation. Big engineering feats like seawalls, elevated roads, and other infrastructure and vastly improved drainage systems.
And we're going to be talking about a seawall later in the program.
We will. We've already mentioned that.
We are in trouble here, and you know.
Well, another sign of the trouble is coming up here. It says Hurricane Florence is the latest setback to struggling flood insurance program.
These two articles are both from CNN. Hurricane Florence will bring flooding and destruction to thousands of homes in the Carolinas and Virginia. It is another blow for the federal government providing insurance against flood damage that has already had $16 billion in debt forgiven by Congress. And that thing of the debt being forgiven, I didn't even see that when it happened. I look at the news pretty closely, and you know,
nobody was talking about it.
Nobody was talking about it. But you know, a couple of years ago, I did a study. This was before that $16 billion was forgiven, and the study that I did graphed out the cost of insurance in the United States starting in 1978, and it went to 2015. And what had happened was there was a huge hurricane early in the season during the 1960s, and somebody suddenly realized that if there was another hurricane in the same season of the same magnitude, it would bankrupt much of the insurance industry in the United States. And that would send economic problems through the country and actually the world. So they decided what they were going to do would be to have a law, which was passed. It was bipartisan. It was very heavily supported, saying that the flood insurance was backed by the federal government.
Well, you can't buy private flood insurance.
Yeah. So
the government is the only source.
Yeah.
It's this national flood insurance program.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about wind damage. I think you can cover wind damage by insurance, but
the flood insurance is separate,
not
and
water
it comes
damage.
from FEMA. But nevertheless, what happened was they started realizing that the same properties were getting claims over and over again. So what they did in 2004, it was passed.
They put a limit on it, didn't they?
They put a limit on. And the deal was, if you have 2 claims of $1,000 or more during a 10-year period, your property is no longer insurable.
Yeah.
And there are properties in the United States that have had their values basically go to zero because they can't be insured.
Yep.
And
we've mentioned that before.
Yes, indeed. So in 1978, insurance premiums in the United States were something on the order of $82 million. By 2015, they had got up to about $5.5 billion.
Okay.
This is a 43%. I'm sorry, a 43. The change was by a factor of 43.
43 times.
43 times. Now inflation.
4,300%.
Yeah, for inflation and increase in population and the increase in the value of the property and so forth, you would expect an increase of about 5.5 times, but it was 43 times.
And a lot of these are really nice properties.
Now look at this: $16 billion has been forgiven.
Yeah. Yep.
That hadn't happened yet.
So they're broke.
They're worse than broke. They're running up debt faster than it can be paid. And the premiums are going up. They cannot increase the premiums enough to Well, I got news for you. Donald Trump, you own all that property. Mar-a-Lago, time to dump it. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, let's move on. We got another picture coming up.
This is a weird picture.
This one I know is right for this article.
Yep,
so
this is Sunday, September 16th.
It looks like a chip, but it's not.
It looks almost like one of those Raspberry Pi computers. Every time I see this thing, that's what I think of.
Well, this is much larger than that.
Oh, I guess. This is from
It's a very interesting article. It's high-tech. I didn't even understand it myself.
This is from Transmission and Distribution World.
But this is an interesting concept. They've developed a giant battery, basically.
Yeah.
Siemens launches frequency stabilizers to support power grids in milliseconds.
With its SVC plus frequency stabilizer, Siemens is the world's first supplier to combine reactive power compensation capability with the use of a supercapacitor. In less than 50 milliseconds, it can provide power needed for a stable grid operation. Now, 50 milliseconds is about a half a cycle in a 60 hertz. So, you know, we should explain to people, in the past, when the grid has needed more power or whatever, traditionally the way that this would be dealt with is you'd turn on something that would look like a jet engine. Yep. It would be up to power in, you know,
10 minutes.
10 minutes. It might have been spinning power, so it was already running and just kept there.
Almost immediately.
So it'd be up in a minute or
but
two, 5 minutes at the most, but you're paying for it and it's coming out of your pocket constantly. And what they're doing now is something that is far higher quality, and you know, this is yet one more threat against natural gas.
Well, it's interesting reading into this article. It's all automatic.
Yeah.
When the load balances what's available, the cycles remain constant.
Yeah.
And if you start exceeding the load, the cycles start going down.
Yeah.
You know, so this thing, boom, pops something right into the grid.
All of a sudden.
Up to 200 megawatts are stored in these supercapacitors.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And a supercapacitor is just a capacitor that's very, very large.
And a capacitor is like a battery, except that it doesn't change. It doesn't have a chemistry that you have to.
Well, a capacitor, the thing about a capacitor is it's great for storing energy, but you can't get it in and out slowly like you can in a battery. It's boom. And that's what this thing's taking advantage of.
Yeah.
That's why they can do it in 50 milliseconds.
Okay. We are up to an article from Info Sir Hoy, which, by the way, is a publication that comes from South America, or Latin America, I should say. Okay.
You got a picture coming up for this one too?
Nope.
That picture goes.
Our next picture is a different thing.
It's a coal mine.
It's a coal mine.
It's a coal mine. That's for the next article.
Yep.
I got this one all messed up. Hurricane Florence is 50 miles larger and 50% more rain thanks to climate change. But that's a hoax.
It's for the first time, researchers have calculated the impact of climate change on a hurricane as it was active. Hurricane Florence, they found, was about 50 miles broader and dumped 50% more rain than it would have without climate change. These calculations, by the way, are, I don't know about the broader, but the rain part is a pretty easy calculation to do. This is science. This is not a hoax. It's not something that people are making up. The 50% more rain, well, the hurricane went across ocean that was warmer, and it had warmer air.
Quite a bit warmer.
Yeah, so more water evaporated into it, and because it had warmer air, it could hold more water, and when it hit colder air, that water got dumped out, and when the water got dumped out, it was a greater amount of water. So it's just that simple. It's something that you can just calculate. The broader, yes, going across warmer water, it's going to be a bigger hurricane. I don't know how to calculate that, but you know, I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not a climatologist.
What goes up must come down.
What goes up must come down. You're absolutely right.
I find it very interesting, though. after it left the Carolinas,
Yep.
out of all the United States that it could have passed over, it passed over us.
Yes, indeed. And it was a very strange path. It hit North Carolina.
Yeah.
And the next day it was in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And the next day it was in South Carolina. And the next day it was in South Carolina. And the next day it was in, maybe it wasn't days, maybe it was 12-hour periods. But it hovered over North Carolina and wandered south into South Carolina, wandered back to North Carolina, and then kind of
and
took
it started heading toward Ohio.
Yep.
It curved around and came into New England.
And it went directly over Brattleboro.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right smack dab in the middle.
That's right. Although when it went over Brattleboro, there was a lot of rain, but
not what was heading down south.
Nothing like during the worst of the rain. What was I doing? I was walking up to Canal Street under an umbrella. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, I think we should. Now we got that picture.
That's right. We have an item here from Michael West News. I don't know anything about Michael West News.
I don't either. I never heard of it. That is a coal mine.
That's a coal mine.
And if you look real quick, down in the lower left corner, there's a couple of yellow spots you can spot.
Yeah.
They're trucks that are about the size of a two-story house.
Yeah.
So to give you some idea of how big that pit is.
Yeah, and if you dumped the contents of one of those trucks on a two-story house, you'd have a 6-inch tall pile of rubble.
I think you would. I think you would.
Those things are big. Okay. Did you read the title?
I did not read that.
Okay.
Marubeni's shock exit from coal.
Japanese energy giant Marubeni Corp is getting out of coal and accelerating its shift into renewable energy dramatically, according to a story in Nikkei. I find it very difficult to get into Nikkei sometimes, by the way. And so I rarely use Nikkei as a source because I want to make sure that I'm using sources that people can actually get to.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, you could get to it. You know what I do here, by the way? When I open a story, and sometimes, like Clean Technica, I know that I can give the link to the story to a person who visits the blog, and they can click on that link and they can go to it, and it'll be there for them.
Most of the time, 99% of the time you do.
Guardian, same thing. There's some big publications like the New York Times. People can go into that.
Yeah.
Some publications like Forbes.
They want money.
No, Forbes is okay, and Bloomberg is okay, but Fortune, for example, you can't get to unless you've got a subscription. Some publications you can get into if you come from a web searcher, but if you come in with a link that the publication has, they know the difference, and so they won't let you in with a link, only if you come from a web searcher.
That's interesting.
So what I have to do when I come
to a place like... They know more about you than you know about yourself.
When I come to Michael West News, or something like that, I click on this, I see the link. Now I say to myself, I've never seen this organization before. And this is probably a third or more of the articles that I click on. I don't know whether they will let my reader in or not. So what I have to do is because the computer that I've got identifies itself, I have to take that link and put it on a computer that identifies itself differently in order to find out if that other computer will let it in.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, fortunately, I don't have to take it and put it on a thumb drive or anything like that because I have a virtual computer in my computer that says, I'm a different computer. You don't know me. But that's what I have to, and the worst of it is, on top of everything else, there are organizations where they will let you in on the day that they put the thing up, but they won't let you in the next day or the next week or whatever. So people occasionally get to my blog and they can't get to the story, and unfortunately, the number of stories that you can't get to increases as the things are older, but they work most of the time.
Well, there's a quick takeaway from here, and it's valid. Marubeni's surprise decision shows industry leaders increasingly envisage coal plants and coal mines as stranded assets.
Well, I got news for you. They should be thinking about gas plants as potential stranded assets too.
Well, I think really anything that's depending upon fossil fuels is going to be stranded.
Any kind of non-renewable fuel can be stranded. Donald Trump is talking about coal and gas being secure. I got news for you. There's nothing secure about them. And this thing that happened in North Carolina.
It's not reality, it's politics.
No, well, you know. Okay, are we done with that one?
Yeah,
we are up to Monday, September 17th, and we don't have a picture for this.
No, I'm seeing what's going on here. The picture is there on my screen.
Yeah.
But there's a thin line over the picture that's supposed to tell me that it's in the next one.
Okay.
And it's a real thin line.
Yeah. We're up to Monday, September 17th, and we have an item from the Asbury Park Press.
Oyster Creek
Oyster
is shutting down for good today.
This is published on Monday, September 17th, and obviously it was just before the Oyster Creek plant shut down. The aging Oyster Creek, nuclear reactor at Oyster Creek is closing after a half-century run. The station has been a local icon since its construction in the 1960s. It has also been the source of concern for local people who will continue to worry about safety during decommissioning. And the Oyster Creek plant closing down leaves the United States with 98 operating nuclear reactors, or I should say operational. They can be operating because right now about 11 of them are not for one reason or another. Almost all of those because of their refueling. But we have 98 operating nuclear plants. We've got about 10 that are scheduled to close and 2 that are being built.
And they don't know what to do with the nuclear waste.
They don't know what to do with the waste.
In this particular case, they plan on storing it there for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And the local people are not happy with that.
Well, it's basically
just as they're not happy here
yeah.
in Brattleboro for the very same reason.
I was going to say it's basically what they're doing here, but the waste is always stored in the United States at the nuclear plant.
Yeah.
Because they don't have anything else to do.
They don't have any place to put it.
And they had this that thing out west where they were going to put a nuclear storage facility, and quite frankly, I don't like that either for a very good reason, which is in order to get the waste from here to there, you got to transport it.
Got to put it on a highway.
You got to, or a railroad.
And
you spend a minute standing close to one of those rods, and your life is not going to be very long. And you know, if one of those rods spilled, how in the world would you clean? They'd probably have to build robots to clean it up.
Well, when these things were first envisioned and built, they kind of soft-pedaled that idea. They didn't
sure
even
did.
want to talk about it.
They just said, this is something we can take care of when the time comes, and that's 40 years off, so anyway.
Well, let's move along here.
Okay.
We do have a picture with this one.
Yes, we do.
And let's get that picture up, because it's kind of pretty. It's also very contemporary.
And it's kind of disturbing when you look at it closely. Okay, this is from the Cannon City Daily Record, another one that I had to try out on my virtual computer.
It's a long but very interesting article.
Yes.
This is one of the ones I think you should look up.
Yes.
Colorado rolls with climate shift, grappling with low river flows and a complicated debate over reservoirs.
And you know, really, this is a serious problem. You'd think the people in Colorado could say, well, we've got a reservoir, we should be allowed to let it fill up. Sorry, they've got obligations to people downriver.
Yeah.
And you know, Colorado's ongoing shift toward a hotter and drier climate is spurring such quick adaptations as allowing taller stacks of hay on trucks rolling into the state. But but it also is forcing a scramble to examine climate change. Yeah.
Well, quantifying the impact of this rising heat is crucial to anticipate future water supplies.
Yes, it is.
And that's basically what this article's about.
Yep. And if they don't do it now, when the time comes, it'll be too late. And you know, Colorado is in an interesting kind of position because it has a very, you know, in the east we've got a infrastructure that we find easy to envision. You know, we've got roads and things like that go across the countryside, railroads and whatnot. I remember in 1973, in April, I think it was the city of Aspen, got hit by a blizzard in April. Mm-hmm. And that blizzard shut down the roads for several days. Mm-hmm. And within 24 hours of the time it struck, every single retailer and wholesaler of home heating oil had run out.
Boy.
Why? Well,
I said boy.
They had no inventories.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And with a sudden call, the inventories, the little bitty inventories that they had were run out very quickly. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, what does that tell you? Every single company had neglected to its inventories. Why would they do that?
It was the end of the season.
It was more than the end of the season because they fill those tanks in the summer when they're called to. Mm-hmm. So why? Because the big companies all of a sudden were switching to gasoline for the summer, but they all did it at the same time.
Oh, how strange.
And then all of a sudden we get news that the Arabs are going to stop sending us oil.
Ah, coincidence.
Coincidence. The Arabs knew darned well we were running out of oil, you know, and they were just taking advantage of it. And frankly, the last ships from Arabia and from that part of the world to get to the United States arrived after the oil crisis was over. Those people knew that they were going to get political clout by saying, we caused that, when in fact, yeah, they're causing it was a little bit more iffy.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, but even to this day, most people think they caused it.
Yeah, well, before they caused it,
it was being caused.
I stocked up on a bunch of things that I knew the price was going to go up.
Mm-hmm. Oil was one of them?
No. Well, I did actually have a full tank of home heating oil. I bought myself a car that was very efficient.
Okay.
I knew this was coming. You know, everybody around me thought I was out of my mind. But
we won't comment on that.
Yeah, well, that's okay. You don't have to comment on it, but sometimes I come up with something that works. Okay, should we escape my discussion?
Yeah, this is an interesting one from the New York Times.
Yes.
Nature roars. Washington hears nothing.
As if this past summer of merciless heat waves, droughts, and megafires were not warming enough, in the past several days the elements sounded another alarm about global warming caused by burning fossil fuels. Meantime, the EPA, what's it doing? It proposes weakening the rules on methane.
The warning that they're talking about here came in the form of a 1-2 punch of wind and rainfall from Hurricane Florence.
Of course.
Which has derived much of its wallop, which we've talked about, from unusually warm ocean waters.
By the way, Donald Trump has gone to North Carolina and told the people there that they will get whatever they need to get out of the trouble that they're in.
That's nice.
Isn't that nice?
I'm glad he cares.
Why didn't he do that at Puerto Rico? My suspicion is that he wasn't aware of the fact that Puerto Rico was part of the United States.
I wouldn't bet against that.
Well, it's a kinder approach to this than saying that he didn't do it because he was racist.
Yes, it is. It's kinder.
So instead of being evil, I'm just saying I think he's stupid.
Well, to no one's surprise, this linkage that we just talked about went unacknowledged in President Trump's Washington.
Of course. We are up to Tuesday, September 18th, and we should probably hurry through the rest of the. We have to hurry through the rest of the article.
We got an image for this one.
Yes.
I've got to bring this up.
This is from Clean Technica.
Now that's an interesting
picture.
It is interesting because that thing is floating.
Yes.
The public wants renewable energy, and they want it now.
Utility companies like automakers would like to party as if it's 1999 forever, but consumers are beginning to realize their future lies with zero-emissions vehicles and renewable energy. The transition has begun. If the people will lead, their leaders will follow. I love that line. Spread the word. Well, in a democracy, people are supposed to lead, aren't they?
They are supposed to.
Yeah.
But Democracy is an interesting idea. I'd like to try it sometime.
Yeah, we don't have much time, Tom, so we
well,
should
there's
keep
something
going.
here about appropriate to what we've been talking about.
Yep.
Utilities are petrified about what economists call stranded assets.
Yes.
Coal, gas, and nuclear power generating stations may have to be retired from service earlier than planned, depriving utilities of years, if not decades, of revenue.
Yes.
And they're fighting against that.
That's right. Okay, our next item is from Market Insider. That is INSIDER.
Yeah, I was going to show. I was going to show
INCIDER.
that picture one more time, because it's not anchored to the bottom. Look at the picture there.
Yeah.
It's not anchored to the ocean floor.
Yeah.
It's floating. It's tethered, but not
You
anchored.
can put this out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, 1,000 miles from nowhere, and have it running. I don't know where you'd be delivering your electricity to, but you could do it.
Well, I think on our West Coast, and particularly in Japan, this is what they have to do.
That's what they're planning on. Okay, Markets Insider.
This is the Southern California Gas to offer renewable natural gas at its fueling stations for the first time. They sell natural gas to cars.
And trucks.
And trucks, to vehicles.
Yep. Southern California Gas Company announced it will soon begin using renewable natural gas at the 25 utility-owned natural gas vehicle fueling stations across the service territory, as well as 6 fueling stations in San Diego. Renewable natural gas, that just means that it's made from the, the pig manure that should have been made into renewable natural gas in North Carolina.
It's like cow power is.
It's like cow power, yeah. We should keep going. We've got 4 more items and 8 more minutes.
Got another picture coming up here.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Yes, I'm sorry, you're right. Okay, got it.
That's a large coal-powered station.
That's what it is.
Very large.
Yep.
Coal-fired power stations are a poor investment.
Private investment in coal power plants is highly unlikely due to poor investment returns, S&P Global said. Its analysis shows renewable energy backed by battery storage or gas offers the most prudent investment, according to a report in the Sydney Morning Herald. This is from Energy Matters.
Well, it's interesting. From this article, is forcing old coal-fired plants to stay open.
Yep.
Wonder who wants to do that. Could make them unsafe.
Yeah.
Rising maintenance costs would then make them uneconomical.
Right.
Wind and solar installations are booming in Australia, despite the absence of a government energy policy.
Right.
Because local governments, businesses, and community groups have stepped up to plug the national energy policy gap.
Right. We are up to Wednesday, September 19th.
This is our last day.
Yep. We have a picture of Miami and an article from Clean Technica.
Yeah, we had
Actually,
Miami up
we're going
there.
to do 2 pictures for this, so just leave that picture up.
Leave it up there for a while. Miami's existence is threatened with as little as 18 inches of sea level rise.
Remember we were talking about 39 inches in 80 years? Yeah. This is 18 inches.
There's Miami, and those, they look like commercial office buildings, but basically they're all apartment houses.
Miami is very vulnerable to the effects of climate change. It sees sunny day flooding as regularly as clockwork. It has the 3rd tallest skyline in the United States, but most of its buildings are close to sea level. It was built on porous sandstone, so even a sea wall will not work. I'll just click to it and it'll go straight up. That's the kind of stone Miami is built on, and the water just runs through it.
I got something like that in my sink. They call it a sponge.
That's right. And so Miami is in trouble, and they don't really have a solution. And Donald Trump, my prediction is that the value of Mar-a-Lago is going to go to 0.
They have a lot of problems.
Yep.
And they can't solve any of them, really.
Yep. And Mar-a-Lago is going to go to 0 value if Trump lives long enough, but I think he could live long enough. Mar-a-Lago will go to 0 during his lifetime. Unsaleable.
We're talking about that porous rock that we just saw.
Yep.
You can't build a seawall because the water's going to rise up inside of the seawall.
It's just going to go right through under the whole thing. Yeah. And they've got the same problem.
But it's happening already. It's starting to pollute the water, the fresh water.
The fresh water is being polluted by seawater because you know, as you pump this fresh water out, it's replaced by seawater. Okay, our
What's
next...
the last article?
No, two more. Our next article is from Clean Technica.
I got that one. This last article I have.
I have Q&A, why offshore wind is the future.
Oh, okay. I thought that was part of this article.
No.
But, okay. More than 130 companies have made science-based targets this year alone.
Since the
so they're starting to think.
Yeah, they are. Since the beginning of the year, more than 130 companies have joined the Science-Based Targets Initiative, pushing the total number of companies close to 500 and representative of about 1/8 of the total market capitalization. So this means that about 1/8 of the countries in terms of market capitalization, so we're talking about countries that are companies that are traded on stock exchanges. More than 1/8 of those are already at a point where they're saying we have to base our evaluation of our decisions on exactly the reverse of what North Carolina did.
We got to use science.
We have to use science. Duh. But that number is growing, and it's grown by about 1/3, well, a little less than a quarter, just in the first 8 months of 2018.
By the way, this Science-Based Targets Initiative, that started in India.
Yes.
Which is very interesting.
Yes, it is. The Indians are
they're getting with it.
They're getting with it. The Chinese are getting with it. The Chinese have closed down twice as many fossil fuel plants in terms of emissions as the British have.
Well, China's a bit bigger.
It is. Should we move along?
Well, I think we should. Let's see. Quick takeaway.
Okay.
Targets based on science are the only effective way to meet the challenges we face.
Well, if you think about a big company like Ford Motor Company or whatever, they're going to want to be able to do their planning on the basis of grinding numbers, you know,
Absolutely.
Just going through the whole thing, actual evaluation, rather than just kind of looking out the window and saying, oh, the sky is blue. I think I'll make blue cars today. It's like non-science-based initiative is like betting on a horse because of its color, really.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, and we are up to our last item.
And we got a picture
which is from Raconteur.
Nice picture.
It's a nice picture.
Why offshore wind is the future. And this article is all questions and answers, and we could spend the rest of the day talking about it. We could have spent the whole
show on this, absolutely.
Just on this one alone with the questions and answers.
But it really explains a whole lot about what's wrong with fossil fuels and why Ørsted is moving away from fossil, or has moved away from fossil fuels. Energy company Ørsted has abandoned its oil and gas business it began with for renewables. Now it has 11 offshore wind farms in the UK, including the world's biggest, Walney extension. Matthew Wright, Ørsted UK Managing Director, explains the thinking behind the move. We should explain. Ørsted is the new name for Dong. Dong.
Danish oil and gas, or oil
natural gas. This is a company that started with oil and natural gas, and they made a lot of money on oil and natural gas.
And now they're out of it completely.
They are now completely out of oil and natural gas, which is why they changed their name. Danish oil and natural gas doesn't make any sense when you consider that they've changed. But they have, and this I think illustrates the big problem that fossil fuels have got. They have to, first of all, acknowledge the fact that they're going to have stranded assets whether they like it or not. And second, they're going to have to understand that the only way they can move into a safe and stable future is to do assessments based on science and not based on fear of losing stranded assets that they are
like that
going
brown
to.
Horse.
Man, I don't like that brown horse.
I would recommend, if you got the time, look this up and follow the questions and answers, because they do ask some good questions and they answer them well.
That was on Wednesday, September 19th, and so if you want to find it, you can go to geoharvey.com and click on September 19th, and it will be in the 15 or so articles that show up there.
So it looks like we've come to the end of our line today.
Yeah, we have indeed, and it's time for us to say to people, I'm going to switch that, have a perfectly lovely week. Bye.
Adios.